This is the third installment in the repair of the PBR. In this one, I will be attacking the repair of the light tree, which was knocked loose in the accident we had, which started this whole thing. This was not a pleasant repair. The wires they use apparently are extremely thin and delicate, and access is snug, making it hard to handle them. And the copper strip they use on the light trip does not stand up well to soldering iron heat. Since I couldn't solder onto the copper strip going down the side, by the way, I was able to identify plus and minus. I marked the inside of the superstructure for plus and minus, so I didn't screw up the wiring. And the color coding I used was the red for positive and the black for negative, pretty standard. In order to get an electrical connection, I had to go up to the bottom LED, and I was able to solder onto the lead of the LED. I then brought the wires down, drilled a small hole in the superstructure. As you can see, tried to make it as unobtrusive as possible. I had to do it off to the side slightly because of the rigging that's attached right behind the light tree, and I pulled it through the superstructure that way. To keep things as neat as possible, I wanted to keep the solder joint as small as possible. As you can see on the red LED, I think I did that. I was able to keep it close to the stalk and then ran it directly down either side. You can see the positive on the right in the picture, the negative on the left. Now, to keep things neat, I used gap-filling super glue to hold them to the stalk. That seemed to do the trick, and at least I didn't have wires just hanging free. I'm now in a position where I can cosmetically do the job. To give you a better idea as to how this is all working out, I'm pulling back the picture to give you a better perspective. You can see how I'm soldered, how I tried to keep it as clean as possible. The gluing to the light tree and then the wires disappearing through the superstructure. So far, so good. And now we'll move on to trying to mask it. To try and get this looking relatively normal again, I started applying Tester's body contour putty to build it up. So the light tree is now a little thicker than normal in the base, but not too badly so. It contoured, a little filing, a little paint, and we'll see how this went. This picture is actually a shot of when I was all done. There is still more work to do after this photo, but as you can see, the cosmetic results weren't bad. I was able to build it up, sand it, file it, well actually file it, sand it, and then paint it. As I mentioned the first episode, the paint match is not a perfect match, but seemed to be close enough. So here we go. In this picture, you have everything working. We haven't reached that point yet in real life. In this picture, you can also see I continued the customization. I did some painting of the machine guns, the radome up on top, and continued just sort of the little modifications and personalizations of the project. As I mentioned earlier, the wires they used were very fragile, extremely thin single-strand wires. They must be somewhere around 27 gauge wire. Hard to handle, easy to break. For future use, I wanted to find a way to do this, if I ever had to do a repair again, to minimize the handling of the wires. So I had a brain fart. I pulled out an old terminal strip from my box of spare parts, and this 5-terminal strip was obviously too big to fit, but I cut off each wing from the center, giving me 2 terminals on each. My plan being to have the power in to one terminal, a shunt going over to the other, and then the wires from the lights going to the second terminal. That way, if I ever had to resolder or change an LED, I could do it with minimal manipulation of the other wires. The end result, we have the 2 terminal strips. These will now fit inside the superstructure perfectly, as you will see in a moment. I was able to tuck them out of the way. I used super glue to hold them in place, and it was just a perfect fit. Here are the 2 terminal strips in place. There's a little square area in the superstructure underneath it, and one of the strips, the positive, I chose to put on the outside of that little block, and the negative, not that it matters which way it goes, the negative I put on the inset in that block. There was a little cutout in it, and the strip just fit in very nicely. A little bit of super glue on both of those. They went in. All the wires are connected now. Give you another angle. Maybe it'll help you see it better. I know it's confusing. There are a lot of wires there, but it's a lot simpler than it looks. So now we have it as the leads from the receiver go to one terminal on each strip. I then have a jumper going to the other, and all the light leads go to that second terminal. Now, they could have all been connected, but as I said, I was looking to do this so that if I ever had to go back in again, I could access the lamps separately and simply, or the power. I did not want to play with those thin wires any more than absolutely necessary. Here we have a nice shot in the dark. My apologies to Peter Sellers on that one. All the lights are working. Everything is in order. The next few pictures are going to be just simply of the other changes I made on the boat. And finally, the boat went out for a test run this morning, and the sponges that I showed in the second installment made a huge difference. I had a perfectly dry hull for the second, from the second installment. The sponges took care of everything. There was absolutely no water sloshing around in the inside. There was water in the superstructure, but none in the hull. From this shot, again, you can see the lights are working. You can also see I added the white strips to the life preserver to sort of give some realism. There's a coil of rope under it on the deck. I also painted the machine guns, and you can see I painted the anchor. You can also see that the radome was painted gray, and the canopy was painted a tan. And there you have it. Everything's in working order. We're back in the water again. The personalization, modifications, the repairs, all done and complete. I am sure the mods and Customization will continue. It's been fun doing it, and I will probably continue doing it, trying to make it look and run better.